Ambassador Evelyn Hayes smiled. The smile was slight, the polite upturn of lips perfected across decades of banquets, treaties, and photo ops. But behind the practiced expression her eyes tracked every angle of the room. The exits disguised as ornament, the glint of a guard's plasma rifle half concealed under ceremonial drape, the nervous shuffle of an aide whose four knees knocked together like rattling dishes. To the council, she was a human representative, 42, pressed black suit, hair bound into a precise bun streaked by a few dignified strands of silver. To herself, she was a mother with one son in the gallery, and to her bones, she was something else entirely, something no one here had cared to remember. Her son sat in the visitor's platform, a teenage silhouette lit by pale blue glow. Nathan Hayes, 16 years old, tall enough to look awkward in his own skin, shifting as though he wished to sink through the floor. He waved once when her gaze found him, a boy's small, embarrassed gesture. Evelyn's smile deepened for an instant, genuine warmth cracking through the diplomatic mask, then faded back into its neutral shape. The council speaker, a being with translucent skin stretched thin over bioluminescent veins, rose. Its voice resonated in multiple frequencies, a chorus that made some human aides wince. Human delegation. You stand before the Council of Galactic Harmony. We thank you for your enthusiasm in joining our sphere of civilization. However, concerns remain. The matter of your species' volatile tendencies must be addressed. Murmurs rolled like tides through the chamber. Evelyn inclined her head slightly. We appreciate your hospitality, she said, her voice steady, silk over steel. It is an honor to stand here. Her words were translated into 30 tongues at once, rippling outward. Some delegates hissed in approval. Others shifted with disdain. The council speaker continued. Recent reports indicate your colonies expand without restraint. Your militaries train relentlessly despite peace. And most troubling, the voice dropped into a hush, there are questions about your predatory instincts. Gasps. A few tentacles flinched. Evelyn let a pause bloom, then offered a polite laugh, soft as a bell. Predatory instincts? My, that is such a colorful phrase. On Earth, we call it survival. Some aides chuckled nervously. A serpentine delegate uncoiled, offended. Evelyn's tone never wavered. The council speaker gestured toward Nathan. To assure cooperation and to ensure transparency, we will take the offspring of your envoy for routine questioning. His perspective as kin to a diplomat will provide clarity on human culture. It is, of course, standard procedure. For the first time, Evelyn's smile froze. Her pulse did not quicken. Her breath remained slow. Only her eyes shifted, narrowing the width of a hair. I beg your pardon, she said softly, as though she hadn't heard correctly. Guards were already moving, tall insectoid figures clicking toward the visitors' gallery. Nathan half rose, confused, as clawed hands closed around his arms. Evelyn remained motionless, her voice calm, conversational. In my culture, when someone takes a child without consent, we have a word. Kidnapping. I wonder, do you have a translation for that here? The chamber rustled with disapproval. It is a lawful inquiry, the speaker insisted. Nathan's voice broke across the chamber, young and startled. Mom. Her fingers clenched behind the podium, nails pressing half-moons into her palm, but her face remained serene. Stay calm, Nathan, she said, every syllable level. They are very kind hosts. They would never do anything improper. A ripple of unease spread among the alien delegates, though they could not say why. The woman's tone was courteous, the words innocuous, yet something in the cadence coiled like a blade wrapped in velvet. The guards led Nathan away. Evelyn did not move to stop them, not yet. She let her gaze follow him until the doors swallowed his outline. Only then did she exhale, long and measured, as if cooling molten iron inside her chest. An avian delegate, feathers lacquered in ceremonial oil, leaned forward. Surely, Ambassador, you do not object. Your compliance demonstrates goodwill. Evelyn turned her head with practiced grace, the small smile returning, sharper now. Oh, on Earth we are all about goodwill. Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, we hand out goodwill like candy. But She tilted her head, eyes narrowing just so. We do tend to remember when someone lays hands on family. It becomes personal. Her words hovered like smoke, seeping into every corner of the chamber. A few delegates exchanged uncertain looks. Others scoffed, dismissing her. The council speaker rapped the podium. Proceedings will continue. Humanity's representatives may remain while the youth undergoes questioning. Evelyn folded her hands neatly before her. Of course, she said. Thank you for clarifying your process. We are grateful for the transparency. But within, something vast and ancient stirred. The memory of mud and blood beneath fingernails, of blades whispered through darkness, of 7,000 lives extinguished by her hand when Earth's shadows still needed such work. She had retired into diplomacy, believing she could bury that part of herself. Yet here, under the brilliant light of the council chamber, the grave cracked open. Her aides leaned closer, whispering advice. Let the lawyers handle it, file petitions, request hearings. Evelyn nodded politely, lips pursed as though considering. None of them saw the calculation in her eyes. On the tiers above, alien voices swelled in debate, dissecting the human envoy's reaction, speculating whether she would resist. They had forgotten the oldest rule of survival. Silence never meant surrender. Evelyn clasped her hands tighter, and her smile widened an imperceptible degree. She raised her eyes to the council speaker. Hospitality is a delicate thing, isn't it? It can build bridges or burn them. The speaker hesitated, some instinct warning through the web of its veins. Evelyn bowed her head slightly, concealing her expression. Inside, her mind was already mapping corridors, calculating guard rotations, recalling the faint stutter in the lights of the detention wings she'd glimpsed during arrival. 1,000 threads of possibility wound together into something sharp. From the outside, she looked composed, a diplomat gracious under insult. Inside, the quiet machinery of war clicked back into motion, a long-dormant beast stretching in the dark. The session continued, irrelevant speeches echoing, while Evelyn sat in her chair with immaculate posture. She appeared attentive, even respectful. Only the faintest trace of steel in her eyes betrayed that her patience had begun to count down in seconds rather than hours. She pictured Nathan's face as the guards led him away, the confusion, the sudden childlike fear. The boy was her anchor, her single fragile thread to peace, and the council had yanked it. The last restraint around her soul loosened. When adjournment was called, Evelyn rose, adjusted her suit jacket, and offered another gracious nod. We thank the council for its time today. Your concern for our tendencies is duly noted. Delegates muttered, some relieved, some suspicious. She walked from the chamber with footsteps measured and calm. Her aides hurried to keep pace, whispering strategies. She ignored them. In the privacy of the transport bay, Evelyn paused at the viewport. Beyond the glass stretched the sprawl of council vessels, their hulls gleaming like jeweled predators circling a star. She let her reflection stare back at her, sharp cheekbones, calm smile, and eyes that once upon a time had terrified hardened men. She reached into her jacket, fingers brushing against a small, old device hidden in the lining, a relic from Earth's wars, still functional, still loyal. She whispered, too quiet for her aides to hear. They think they took my son for questioning. What they really did was sign their own verdict. Her smile returned, flawless and gentle, as she turned back toward the waiting corridor. The air around her felt colder, denser, as though the star itself dimmed. Somewhere deep inside, the part of her history she had sworn to bury finally opened its eyes. And in that silence, death put on her suit again. The detention wing of the council's cruiser was engineered to intimidate. Corridors stretched in sterile precision, white panels humming faintly with power. Corners curved so subtly they tricked the eyes into thinking the hallways never ended. For most beings, it was a labyrinth of hopelessness. For Evelyn Hayes, it was simply a puzzle, and puzzles existed to be solved. She walked its length with the same posture she'd worn in the chamber, back straight, hands folded loosely, smile as soft as a lullaby. To the guards at her side, she looked like a weary diplomat indulging a formality. To anyone who understood the human predator hidden beneath civility, she looked like the first cold gust before storm. The insectoid escorts clacked their mandibles in private chatter, assuming she didn't understand the click language vibrating through the air. Evelyn did. She had learned languages once considered impossible, their codes etched into her brain like scars. They called her docile. They called her unaware. They called her harmless. Each word was filed away like a bead strung onto wire, waiting for the moment when she'd pull it tight around their throats. She glanced at the ceiling where surveillance eyes blinked in quiet rhythm. "You keep immaculate halls," she said conversationally, her words delivered in calm English that the translator pin on her lapel broadcast into their ears. "We have a saying back home, cleanliness is next to godliness. Do you have gods?" The taller of the guards twitched, confused, the translation lagging. Evelyn's smile lingered, as if she had said nothing unusual. When no reply came, she hummed faintly, a tune that sounded like a mother rocking her child to sleep. The sound made the guard's carapace ripple uneasily. They arrived at a checkpoint where a violet-skinned warden awaited. Its eyes blinked in triads, bored but sharp, scanning her credentials. "Diplomatic inspection," Evelyn said smoothly, offering her identification crystal. The warden hesitated, uncertain whether to approve, then shrugged with the arrogance of a bureaucrat and pressed the release. The heavy doors parted, spilling them into the detention corridor. Rows of cells lined either side, filled not only with criminals, but with unlucky souls deemed of interest to the council. Some stared at her with hollow eyes. Others turned away. Evelyn took in everything. The security grid humming low, the cycle of guards' footsteps, the faint stutter in the lighting near the far end. Weakness in a system always revealed itself to those patient enough to wait. She let herself linger at one cell, peering in at a reptilian prisoner whose scales had dulled with captivity. He hissed faintly, and Evelyn tilted her head with polite sympathy. "We've all been guests somewhere we didn't wish to be, haven't we?" she murmured. The guard barked at her to move along, and she did unruffled, storing away the warden's rhythm of commands and the key code sequence on his wrist device. Above, in the council chamber, debates simmered. Species whispered unease. Some dismissed humanity as brash upstarts. Others recalled fragmented reports of wars fought in Earth's orbit, where fleets twice their size had mysteriously vanished. An elder from the aquatic realms leaned toward a colleague, voice low. "I have seen predators in the deep. They smile before they bite." Watch the human woman carefully. Back in the corridor, Evelyn paused before a viewport slit. Beyond it stretched the endless field of stars, cold and pitiless. Her reflection stared back at her. Sharp eyes, faint lines of age at the corners, lips pressed into that diplomatic curve. For a heartbeat, she saw the ghost of her younger self, face streaked with camouflage, eyes like steel. She blinked, and the diplomat returned. Her aides had been ordered to remain outside. They wrung their hands in waiting rooms, filing protests through proper channels, clinging to procedure as drowning men cling to driftwood. They did not know Evelyn had already written the outcome in her head, and it was written in blood. A guard finally gestured to a sealed chamber ahead. Nathan's cell. Her chest tightened, but outwardly she maintained the calm of marble. She allowed herself one deep inhale, memorizing the smell of the sterile air, the faint tang of her son's sweat lingering beyond the door. He was alive. That was enough for now. "Before I enter," she said softly, "may I know how you intend to question him? Humans are fragile. He might break easily." Her voice carried genuine maternal concern layered with sharp undertones the guards could not name. The warden chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. "We have ways." Evelyn's eyes flickered. "Yes," she said, "so do we." The chamber doors closed behind her with a hiss, sealing her away from the escorts. Inside, Nathan sat on a narrow bench, hands bound by glowing restraints. His face lifted, pale and strained, but his eyes brightened the moment they saw her. "Mom." She crossed the room swiftly, kneeling to his level, her hands gentle as she touched his cheeks. "Did they hurt you?" "No," he said, voice trembling. "They just keep asking questions. About Earth, about Dad, about you. I didn't say anything. You did perfectly. Her voice was warm, motherly, yet every syllable carried steel. She brushed hair from his forehead and whispered, "Do not be afraid. You're coming home with me." The surveillance node above glowed red, recording. Evelyn lifted her gaze to it and smiled. "My son is well. Thank you for your care." Her tone was polite, dripping with a cordiality so sharp it might cut steel. The node dimmed uncertainly, as if the machine itself recognized danger. When she rose, her eyes flicked over the cell, every angle, every weakness. The binding field generator hummed near the corner, its rhythm steady but faintly stuttering, like a heart about to fail. She memorized it in silence. Later, as guards escorted her back to her shuttle, she carried herself as though nothing had shifted. Yet beneath the surface, every gear in her mind turned faster. She replayed each detail, each weakness catalogued, each insult recorded. The facade remained, smiling diplomat, calm envoy. But behind it, the assassin stirred, coiling tighter. In private quarters aboard her transport, Evelyn dismissed her aides with soft assurances. When the doors sealed, she activated a hidden panel in the floor. From it rose a case wrapped in dull steel. She pressed her palm to the biometric lock. It opened with a hiss to reveal old companions. Compact weapons, a blade honed to whisper through armor, a small transmitter tuned to frequencies forbidden in the council space. She traced her fingers across them as though reacquainting herself with dear friends. Her reflection in the viewport shifted, no longer just diplomat. Death in a suit awakened. On the council's internal channels, arguments raged. Some insisted the boy's detention was trivial. Others cautioned restraint, reminding of ancient proverbs, "Never take the cub of a predator." A historian, wrinkled and gray, whispered, "I have studied their wars. Humanity is not dangerous because they fight. They are dangerous because they smile while waiting." Meanwhile, Evelyn drafted polite communiques, requesting status updates, lodging official protests. Each word was immaculate, diplomatic, and completely useless. She knew it. The council knew it. But the facade was essential. It bought her time. At night, she walked the quiet halls of her quarters, Nathan's absence a wound. She remembered holding him as a baby, his tiny hand clutching her finger. She remembered the vows she had made to never let the shadows of her old life touch him. And now those shadows were creeping in, dragged forward by arrogance. Her chest ached, but her mind sharpened. When dawn's cycle came, Evelyn entered the council cruiser again, this time as part of a scheduled tour for diplomatic inspection. The guards escorted her through familiar halls. She let her fingers brush the cool walls, counting steps, confirming patterns. She joked lightly with them. "On Earth, our prisons serve coffee. Do you serve anything other than fear?" The guards clacked uncertainly, unsure whether she jested. Evelyn smiled sweetly. "Ah, cultural differences." At one checkpoint, she leaned in conspiratorially. "Do you know what duct tape is?" The guards blinked. "Never mind," she said, amused. "Let's just say we can fix anything with it. Or anyone." Her words meant nothing to them, yet unease settled into their posture. That was enough. She returned to her quarters with maps engraved in her mind. Every light flicker, every guard rotation, every access code half glimpsed in reflections. The puzzle was nearly solved. In the chamber of the council, debates grew louder. The council speaker declared humans reckless, their envoy insolent. But in private, whispers spread. Some said her smile unnerved them more than open threats. Some recalled her stillness, like a predator biding time. The facade of alien superiority was cracking, hairline fractures spreading across its surface. Evelyn knew it. She could feel the weight of their unease pressing against the walls like a dam ready to burst. That evening, as she sat at her desk, Nathan's voice echoed in her mind. "I didn't say anything." He didn't need to. His mere capture had been enough to awaken the part of her that had lain dormant for years. She placed her hand flat on the desk, nails tapping once, twice, thrice. A rhythm from old days, a signal to herself. She looked up at the viewport again, the galaxy sprawling wide and merciless. Softly, almost lovingly, she whispered, "They don't know yet. But they will." Her eyes glinted in the starlight, cold and alive. The facade was still intact to outsiders, polished and perfect. But beneath it, the cracks had widened into chasms, and through them, death was slipping free. The cruiser's detention wing was quieter than usual, a silence born of routine and arrogance. Guards leaned against their posts, mandibles clicking lazily, talons wrapped around rifles more for show than readiness. They had seen human diplomats before, nervous creatures who bent themselves into politeness, whose smiles were masks of inferiority. What they had never seen, what they could not fathom, was what walked through their halls now. Evelyn Hayes stepped into the corridor with the composure of a guest touring a museum, her hands clasped loosely behind her back, lips curved in that same infuriatingly gentle smile. To the watchers on surveillance feeds, she was the picture of restraint. To the guards standing too close, there was something wrong in the air, as though the temperature had dropped a fraction, as though the atmosphere itself was holding its breath. She paused by one guard, tilting her head as though admiring the alien's polished carapace. "Tell me," she asked in flawless translation, "how many of your kind does it take to restrain a single child?" The guard clicked uneasily, not sure if it was being mocked. Evelyn's smile never wavered. 2 seconds later, the corridor's feed fuzzed into static. When the image returned, the guard was gone, replaced by a faint shadow on the wall and a rifle lying neatly on the floor. Evelyn's steps continued, unhurried, as though nothing had changed. She had not planned for elegance tonight. She had planned for inevitability. From hidden compartments within her diplomatic case, old instruments of death reawakened. A slim blade whose edge was monomolecular, a coil of wire strong enough to slice steel, a sidearm whose ammunition was older than the council itself, yet devastating in its simplicity. She carried them lightly, as though they weighed no more than a strand of pearls. One by one, guards vanished from their posts. No alarm sounded. She moved with the silence of a winter storm creeping over a sleeping village, erasing footprints as it came. When she passed a reflective surface, she glimpsed herself not as the envoy, but as the woman she once had been, the shadow that governments denied existed, the whisper that ended 7,000 lives in forgotten wars. Death in a suit, awake again. Her son's cell was ahead, but Evelyn did not rush. Rushing was for the desperate. She was not desperate. She was certain. Every step was measured, each breath steady. She passed cells where prisoners pressed close to the barrier fields, watching in mute fascination as alien guards disappeared without struggle. Some would remember this night forever. Legends they would whisper in the dark. The human woman who walked through the council's fortress like a ghost. At Nathan's door she paused. The restraint field shimmered faintly. Inside, her boy looked up, eyes wide, face pale with sleepless fear. The moment he saw her, his mouth formed a single word. "Mom." The sound pierced her chest like a blade, yet her expression remained composed. "Stand back, sweetheart," she said, her voice a calm murmur. "Mama's working." From her sleeve, she drew a thin sliver of metal, no longer than her hand. To the council's engineers, their restraint field was infallible. To Evelyn, it was an equation with missing variables. She slipped the blade into the field's hum, found a stutter in its pulse she had memorized, and pressed. The energy collapsed with a faint sigh. Nathan stumbled forward into her arms. She held him briefly, fiercely, then pushed him back just enough to look into his eyes. "Did they hurt you?" He shook his head, trembling. "They just asked questions. I didn't tell them anything." Her smile softened, and for a moment she was only a mother again. "Good boy. But now we leave." Alarms should have blared then. Troops should have swarmed. Instead, silence hung heavy, broken only by the faint hum of distant engines. Evelyn had already accounted for their timing. She had slipped her own virus into the surveillance grid during her first inspection. The feed showed calm corridors even as she carved her way through them. She guided Nathan through the hall, her hand firm on his shoulder, her gaze scanning every angle. When 3 guards rounded the corner, weapons raised, she moved faster than her son's eyes could follow. A blur, a whisper of steel, the thud of bodies collapsing. Nathan gasped. Evelyn straightened her jacket, stepping over the fallen without so much as a wrinkle in her calm. "Stay close," she told him gently. "Don't look back." Words spread faster than sound. Across the cruiser, aliens felt unease crack their arrogance. Commanders shouted into comms, demanding answers. Why were feeds clear while guards failed to report? Why did sensors show empty halls when prisoners whispered of shadows moving through them? Panic built in layers, and beneath it pulsed the first true fear of humanity they had ever known. Evelyn led Nathan toward the docking bay, every turn precise, every ambush anticipated. Her mind was a chessboard. Each guard a pawn, she moved into place before toppling. At one junction, she paused to retrieve a guard's communicator. She pressed it once, and her voice echoed across channels, calm and cutting. "This is Ambassador Hayes. I want to thank the Council for its hospitality. It has been enlightening. But as humans say, house guests shouldn't overstay their welcome." Static followed. Some species hissed in confusion. Others froze in terror. Her words were polite, almost cheerful, yet the cadence was a blade's edge. The docking bay loomed at last. Council soldiers had gathered, dozens of them, weapons leveled. The shimmer of shield barriers filled the space, cutting off escape. Nathan tensed beside her, but Evelyn only smiled. "They've prepared a farewell party," she murmured. "How thoughtful." The soldiers barked commands. She raised her empty hands, palms outward, the picture of surrender. Nathan clung to her sleeve, heart pounding. Then the hangar lights flickered once, twice, then died. Darkness swallowed the bay. When emergency lamps ignited, half the soldiers were down, their weapons scattered like toys. Evelyn stood in the center, hair slightly loosened, eyes calm, sun still at her side. The survivors stepped back, trembling. None dared fire again. In orbit, human warships uncloaked. Sleek, angular vessels bristling with weaponry, their hulls painted black as midnight. The Council's fleet spun in alarm, scrambling to form ranks. But the humans had already locked every system. Evelyn's virus had spread through their grids the moment they scanned her diplomatic credentials. From the bay's viewport, Nathan saw it all. Ships that had hidden for weeks in Council territory, waiting, patient as spiders. His mouth fell open. "Mom, you planned this?" Her hand rested on his shoulder, steadying him. "I hoped I wouldn't need to. But they made their choice when they touched you." Council generals screamed into channels, demanding explanations. But Evelyn's voice silenced them all as it flooded comms once more. "Hospitality," she said pleasantly, "is such a fragile thing. You had a guest. You made a mistake. On Earth, when someone takes a child, we don't debate. We don't compromise. We end the story before it begins." The hangar trembled as Council ships fired, but their weapons misfired, redirected by corrupted systems. Human warships answered with precision. Targeted blasts that crippled engines, melted shields, left vessels drifting helpless. It was not a battle. It was an execution. Aliens watching across the galaxy saw the truth unravel. Humanity, newcomers with polite smiles and awkward customs, were not harmless. They were predators wrapped in charm, tacticians disguised as diplomats. They had waited, studied, and chosen their moment. And when the mask slipped, they did not bear fangs. They bared inevitability. In the docking bay, Evelyn guided Nathan toward the shuttle waiting for them, untouched amid the chaos. Soldiers stepped aside rather than block her path. Some dropped weapons entirely. Her gaze swept them once, cool and calm, before returning to her son. He looked up at her with new eyes, awe mingling with fear. "You're not just a diplomat." Her lips curved faintly. "No, darling. I never was." As they boarded the shuttle, alarms wailed across the fleet. Beyond the viewport, Council vessels burned in silence, drifting like shattered glass against the stars. Humanity had arrived, not as supplicants, but as architects of fear. Evelyn placed a hand on the shuttle's console, her expression unreadable. She had shown them only the beginning. The real lesson was yet to come. And as the shuttle detached into the void, the Council's comm lines filled with a single chilling message: carried on her calm voice. Humans smile, because we already know how the story ends. The shuttle slid from the hangar like a blade from its sheath, the hull glowing faintly under the heat of residual plasma fire. Behind it, the Council's proud fleet hung crippled, engines gutted, weapon systems dead, their polished grandeur reduced to drifting wreckage. Nathan clung to the seat beside his mother, wide-eyed, still trying to reconcile the image of her in a black suit and calm smile with the storm he had just witnessed. Evelyn Hayes did not look at him yet. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, on the thousands of vessels belonging to the Council still gathering in the void like vultures desperate to prove they were not carrion. Communications channels buzzed with overlapping cries, orders shouted, distress calls sent, accusations hurled in desperate cacophony. Evelyn listened, expression unreadable, fingers tracing calmly across the shuttle's console. She patched into the Council's frequency, waited for silence, and then spoke. This is Ambassador Hayes. If you are wondering whether you are hearing me by choice or because I am overriding your networks, the answer is both. I prefer polite introductions, but necessity makes exceptions. Every ship, every chamber of the Council, fell into hush. Even across species unaccustomed to fear, the weight of her tone settled like ice. Nathan felt the hair rise on his arms, though her words were smooth as silk. Evelyn folded her hands on her lap, posture impeccable. You took my son. You assumed Earth would protest, that I would wring my hands in hearings, that I would beg. Instead, you have learned the truth. Humanity does not beg. Humanity remembers. And humanity repays with interest. In the Council chamber, far away, delegates shivered. Some hissed in denial, others whispered in awe. They had watched entire fleets unravel in minutes, undone by a species they had dismissed as crude. Evelyn's smile deepened by a fraction. On my world, when someone sets fire to your home, you don't hold a meeting. You bring water, or you bring war. Tonight, I bring both. The shuttle entered formation with the waiting human fleet, ships emerging from cloaked positions with terrifying grace. There were more than the Council had believed possible. Dozens, then hundreds, each bristling with weapons, each poised like a predator baring its teeth. Nathan leaned closer to the viewport, unable to look away. How long have they been here? He whispered. Long enough, Evelyn replied. The Council speaker's voice cracked through comms, brittle and outraged. This is an act of aggression. Humanity will be condemned. Evelyn's laugh cut across the frequency, soft and amused. Condemned? My dear, we have been condemned since the day you labeled us volatile. Do not pretend this began tonight. You wrote this ending the moment you touched my child. Council generals scrambled, rallying what forces remained. Fleets shifted, shields raised, those systems flickered under the weight of the virus she had seeded. Evelyn tapped her console once. Across the void, human ships moved as one, precise and merciless, cutting through the remnants of the Armada with surgical strikes. Engines ruptured. Shields collapsed like paper under flame. The Council had gathered an empire's pride, but in minutes it was only debris glinting in the starlight. Inside her shuttle, Evelyn sat serenely, one hand resting on Nathan's knee to steady him as shock hollowed his breath. Mom, he whispered, voice breaking. How are you doing this? She turned then, meeting his gaze fully. Her eyes were calm, ancient, burdened by ghosts he could not yet name. Because long before you were born, I was taught that diplomacy, without strength, is just begging in better clothing. I gave you a life where I wore suits instead of scars. But when they forced my hand, they brought all of me back. Tears stung Nathan's eyes, confusion and pride colliding. He wanted to ask more, to demand why she had hidden this past, but words withered on his tongue. The truth glowed around her like fire, terrible and beautiful. The comms pulsed again. This time it was not outrage, but pleading. A delegation of aquatic elders, their voices trembling, begged for mercy. Ambassador Hayes, we did not support the abduction. We wish no war. Spare us. Evelyn's voice softened, but it did not bend. You watched. You let it happen. Silence is complicity. You may survive tonight, but you will carry this memory. And when humanity comes to your waters, asking for alliance, you will remember which tide we brought. Ships burned. Delegates wept. Across the galaxy, broadcasts carried the images, feeding fear into every world under council dominion. The myth of human fragility shattered like glass. In its place rose a legend wrapped in polished words and polite cadence. Death in a suit, smiling as empires crumbled. At last, as silence reclaimed the channels, Evelyn leaned back. Her eyes returned to the viewport, to the smoldering remains of the once mighty fleet. She spoke not to the council now, but to the galaxy itself. "Human smile," she said, voice clear and deliberate, "because we already know how the story ends, and we write the ending ourselves." Nathan swallowed, heart hammering. He looked at his mother, at the calm curve of her lips, at the fire hidden beneath her suit. He understood then, not completely, but enough, that his life had been sheltered not by treaties, but by the restraint of a predator who had chosen peace for his sake. The shuttle's comm pinged. A human admiral appeared, face grim, uniform crisp. "Ambassador," he said, though the title was spoken now with reverence, "the field is ours." "What are your orders?" Evelyn considered, her gaze sweeping across the stars littered with wreckage. For a long moment she said nothing, then replied, "Hold position. Let them see us. Let every corner of their empire watch and wonder what we will do next. Fear will serve us longer than fire." The admiral nodded, vanishing from the feed. Nathan exhaled, trembling. "So it's over?" Her smile softened. "For tonight." She reached over, brushing his hair back gently, and for a heartbeat she was only his mother again. "You will sleep safely, Nathan. That is what matters." But beyond the shuttle's walls, the council knew safety was a dream forever shattered. They would remember her calm voice, the measured cadence, the terrible inevitability behind her smile. The lesson had been written in wreckage. Never mistake kindness for weakness. Never mistake patience for surrender. Never touch what humanity calls its own. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly, exhaling the weight of 7,000 ghosts and tonight's fresh echoes. She had not wanted this path again, but she had walked it without hesitation once the choice had been stolen from her. She opened her eyes and fixed them on the endless stars, cold and brilliant. Nathan watched her in silence, the truth of who she was settling in his chest like fire. He leaned closer, voice small. "What happens now?" She looked down at him, her smile faint and unreadable. "Now, my darling, we let the galaxy wonder when death will wear her suit again.